Uh, I've got 4 o'clock, and we'll go ahead and call the Water Commission meeting to order for our May 15th meeting. Let's start off with roll call, please.
Commissioner Doba,
I'm here.
Commissioner Bills,
I'm here.
Commissioner Paul, Commissioner Watzak,
Here.
Commissioner Nauman,
Here.
Commissioner Garcia,
Here.
Commissioner Vane.
Here.
Thank you. I believe we have a quorum, so we'll go ahead and continue on. The next item we have on the agenda is public participation. Enables the public to address the commission on any item that's not on the agenda. Please state your name and address for the record. The open meeting law prohibits us from discussing or taking action on an item that's not listed on the prepared agenda. Commission members may, however, respond to any criticism by those addressing the commission or ask staff to review the matter or ask that a matter be placed on a future agenda. Public comments should be limited to 3 minutes reading time. Do we have anybody who wishes to address the commission? If so, please step forward. Hello. You have 3 minutes. Yes, please state your name and address for the record.
My name's D. Can I turn this on and get 3 minutes?
I believe the light is
Hello?
on.
Hello? It's on? Okay.
Yes, just speak directly into it.
All right. Thank you for being here. My name is DJ. Some of you know me, some of you don't. Let's see here. I have, what I'm going to talk about today is water. In the story of Jean de Fleury, or simply Water of the Hills, an injured man and his family settle on a tract of land where he intends to support his family as a flour merchant. Two thieves with their eye on his land and his beautiful young daughter discover that he is a hunchback, just some disabled loser. In order to remove the hunchback from the land, they hatch a plan to block the water spring that supplies nutrition to his flower garden and his family in order to have them move away. Water is in an argument, and so are homeless people. There are 3 types of homeless people: those that have experienced personal injury and have yet to be exonerated or made whole again through litigation, those that have committed heinous crimes such as sexual offenses and felonies, and those that are addicted to drugs and other antisocial behavior. DJ has been injured legally. That is to say, was wrongly accused by Walmart manager Casey Day and Kingman, wrongfully terminated. Now Iris and Jennifer Stasi Poulos of the Flagstaff Library System. What these 3 all have in common is they pointed their finger as if they're Thomas and wrongly accused and personally injured somebody, me. What could possibly be DJ's water today? If he's so badly legally injured, you guessed it, books on the law. Books by publishers such as the American Bar Association. Books such as Employment, Fair Deal for All Clients. Rollout Method of Criminal Defense. Essential Latin for Lawyers. Employment Litigation Handbook. So water is life and I'm homeless, and these books are my only chance of getting out of death and into life. Well, then Iris and Jennifer are those 2 thieves that are blocking my water. I go this far with something, okay? Every Sunday, Christians reminisce about a homeless person whose water was blocked by 2 thieves as they turn his body and blood into water. My investigation this time, who gets to his body first? If Christians get to his body first, and that is to say that Jesus Christ is still alive, making them Thomas, and furthermore, the very people that wrongly accused him, causing his personal injury, his rape and murder. If Christians get to him second, well, then Jesus Christ is dead because it's the blowfly that gets to a body second when the body has been brutally raped and murdered. I mean it. Water is in an argument. Something's in its way. Are you Thomas?
Thank you. Do we have any other public participation this afternoon? Okay. If not, let's go to the approval of the minutes from the April 17th, 2025 meeting. Do we have any comments on the minutes before I ask for a motion? I had one. I think No, no, I'm sorry, it was on something else. Rob, did you have something?
Yes, I do. Are we all,
I believe so.
in the second paragraph of page 2, the second sentence of that paragraph, it says, council directed staff to explore other rate setting models at the next opportunity. Um, I found that statement puzzling. I didn't think there was direction from council to um, explore other rate setting models. In fact, I thought council accepted the recommendation to go with the cost of service approach. And so I'm puzzled by this explore other rate opportunities. It actually doesn't seem accurate to me.
The- As you recall, that's what I recall as well, Rob. So, Lee, do you have any comment on that? Oh, Aaron's here. Aaron, did you hear the question?
Are you reviewing the minutes
Yes.
from my presentation?
Yes, it has to do with reclaimed water.
It says council directed staff to explore other rate setting models at the next opportunity, which should be January 2026. Is that correct?
I thought it was February, that meeting. We'll review the council meeting minutes. I, I'm typically careful to quote, uh, the minutes when I make a statement, so we can review that and make an update if needed. And we can share that at the next meeting.
I think Rob's concern was that it was our understanding that we were going to pursue the cost of service rate study as not necessarily other models. Is that correct?
That's correct. As written, this seems to imply that council asked to explore additional models. And I had thought that, not that there was necessarily closure, but that there was acceptance of the recommendation to pursue a cost of service model.
Yeah, that's what I recall was council direction, but I would have to review, maybe how I stated it to the Water Commission and review perhaps if I was inaccurate, then go back. If the meeting minutes are accurate to what I stated, then I'd have to go back to the city council meeting and we could take the quote from there. Would that work?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this just needs to be reviewed and
And I agree with Aaron. I'm really sorry. I cannot remember exactly how we decided that night. So I expressed that I would prefer we go back and watch the meeting and review the notes and come back to you without having that. I don't feel comfortable stating one way or the other.
yeah, that sounds fine. The reason I've spent a little time on it was I think this is fairly important to know whether either council accepted the direction to pursue a cost of service basis for pricing for the next round of pricing, or whether there was actually a request to look at additional models.
And I completely agree. It's very important we have this right. So if you don't mind, we'll tackle this and then get back to the commission.
Thank you.
Sounds
Yeah.
good. I do have,
Go ahead,
uh,
because I found what I was looking for too. So,
would you like me?
no, go ahead.
Should I just finish? Okay. Page 3, the first full paragraph. This may just be a typo. It said Aaron stated to TAC the water conservation initiatives now. I don't know if that was tackle or um, I think we just need a clarification of the wording there.
That was the one I had too.
Okay, and then I'm sorry, did you want to comment on that?
I'm sorry, I missed your comment. I was making notes about the last comment. Please.
Okay, page 3 at the top, the first full paragraph. This is the, I guess the second sentence. As written, it states, Aaron stated to TAC the water conservation initiatives now. And it doesn't seem to make sense as written. Maybe it's just a typo, maybe that's tackle, but I'm just looking for a clarification. So if someone could just review that sentence and.
It sounds like a typo to me.
Yeah,
TACK. So, any other comments on the minutes? Oh, do you have more, Rob? Go ahead.
One more, top of page 4, just before old business. This was the discussion about who would be interested in participating in the reclaimed water committee. And let's see, it says, I just, for the record, I indicated interest in serving on that committee if there in fact is an opening. So it says Chair Doba asked who on the commission would like to participate in the group beside himself. And I guess for the record, I indicated that I would also be interested.
So we should have that included in the minutes then.
Is that acceptable?
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other comments on the minutes? I believe I do. I believe I do as well. Okay, unless there are other comments, corrections to the minutes, I will accept a motion to approve the minutes with the amendments as identified.
I move that we do that.
We have a motion from Karen. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second from John. Any last comments? If not, all in favor, say aye. 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 Any opposed? Minutes are approved as corrected. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to new business. We've got several items on the agenda for new business this afternoon. The first one is the presentation of the 2024 Consumer Confidence Report. And Jolene, are you going to be talking about that to us?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, good afternoon, Commission members. My name is Jolene Montoya. I am the Regulatory Compliance Section Director. Today with me, I have Krista Snow. She's our Drinking Water Laboratory Supervisor. So we don't have a formal presentation for you today. The Consumer Confidence Report, otherwise known as the Water Quality Report, should have been included in your packet. So we just got it approved from ADQ this week. So we're in progress of getting it out to the public. But we were taking this opportunity for you to ask us any questions or concerns you have about the report.
Thank you. Before I start, do we have any questions from the commission members? I just have a couple. Okay. And, you know, Jolene, I think I wrote the first one of these ever for the city of Flagstaff.
Probably.
And I noticed on the staff report that it's been submitted to ADEQ for approval.
Mhm.
Is that necessary now that they have
Yeah.
to approve the consumer confidence reports?
So they would prefer us to do it ahead of time before we print it in case we put it out to the public and there are errors with it, that we'd have to go back and reprint it after their changes. So we have taken the stance of getting their approval before we do any printing, so we don't have that extra cost in case something was wrong.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know because I don't recall us having to do that years ago. The other one, just a general question on PFAS because that's something that's on everybody's mind now. In reading the consumer confidence report, it doesn't appear to me that we have any concerns about PFAS here in our water resources. And I also saw something on television today where they were cutting back on the regulations for PFAS. The EPA is. I don't know if anybody else has heard that or not.
Yeah, they're reevaluating the hazard index.
They're reevaluating it. So I don't know what impact that has on us. But am I correct in understanding that PFAS is not something that we have any concerns about here?
We are not overly concerned. We did actually last year during our UCMR 5, the unregulated contaminant monitoring rule that we have to do with the EPA currently. We had one detection from it was the Woody Mountain EPS. Lake Mary, our Lake Mary entry point. So we did have one, but other than that, we have had 0 detections. So we're not overly concerned about it, but we are doing our due diligence and testing for that.
Was that surface water that you had that detection on?
It was the,
Yes, it was the mix of the Lake Mary well water with surface water.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear because I do a lot of work with other water providers in the state and this is giving them headaches and it's costing them a lot of money right now. So, okay, with that, any other comments?
Yeah, thank you. Reading through the list of substances, um, I was wondering, the amount detected, it, it's my memory that the city of Flagstaff collects samples on a monthly basis from each one of the water sources. Isn't there an ADEQ requirement for that, or?
It depends on what we're looking for. Each source is tested annually for VOCs, volatile organic compounds, and then nitrate and sodium. Each source is not tested monthly, no.
So the amount detected, they're either an annual result or they're a composite of, more than an annual result if it's something that requires that.
So the amount detected, if it's done every year, it would be the highest from that year. If not, it's the past 5 years of data stay on. So the amount detected would reflect that.
Okay, so it's the highest from that year. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Other comments? John?
I just had a question on your table here on water quality data. At the very bottom right-hand corner, you have unregulated contaminant monitoring rule. And you have a PFAS compound here, perfluorobutanic acid. Could you explain why it's needed there? I'm just curious, and explain the rule a little bit.
so this is the UCMR5 that we've been doing for the past 2 years, the testing. So until we have a detection, we don't have to put it in the CCR. So this past year we had a detection. So per regulations, we have to list it in our CCR for the public to know. So this was our only detection out of how many samples? Rough guesstimate.
It's hundreds of analytes.
Yeah, 100 analytes that we do for this UCMR5.
The other question I have is, for it to be a detect, is it have to be above the regulated limit? Or if you see any at all, say the limit's 5 part per trillion and you see 2 part per trillion, do you have to report that?
I would say, so the UCMR5 have a special suite with our labs, so they have their own detection limits. So these were before the PFAS rule went into play with EPA. So this all this stuff, so that the limits are a little wonky with the testing for, not wonky, but they're maybe a little different. So there is the method detection limit and the reporting limit. If it's above the reporting limit, then yes, we have to put it in there. Most of them did not have a method detection limit. I think they had to redo those. Right. So if it was above the reporting limit from the lab, which they may not have been the 4, I can't remember off the top of my head what the UCMR5 limits were, but they do have limits from EPA of what this suite of tests is supposed to detect.
So this is all this data is on potable water too, right?
Correct.
And I had that circled as well, Jolene, and it says reporting limit is 5 parts per trillion. We detected 6.1, and that's why we had to report the 6.1 then because it exceeded the 5.
Correct.
Okay. Any other comments, questions regarding the consumer confidence report? Rob?
Following up on this PFBA report, when you think of it as this is a communications tool, I think I'm hearing you say that you did did I hear correctly, literally hundreds of tests? And this was literally only one where this showed up?
Yes, so each EPDS was tested at least twice if it was a groundwater source, and then the surface water sources are tested 4 times. And then each time they're testing for 29 different PFAS constituents. So among all of those, I did the math, it was hundreds, and we had one hit.
Yeah, I wonder in terms of a communications tool, if I were a member of the public and didn't have a chance to answer questions like this, I might look at this and say, wow, we're at 6.1, the limit is 5. I'm worried. Whereas put in the context of one hit out of hundreds of tests, that conveys quite a different message. Do you have any ability to write this in a way that, puts this in context or so
Well,
forth to explain that, to perhaps calm people's concerns?
well, in previous reports, we've been able to say that we haven't had any detections. So all our previous communications have said that we have not had any detections from all the sampling we've done. And so, but this was the language we have to put in from EPA and ADEQ. We can, when we present it to the public, we do a communication piece. We can say that as well. We have not yet done our water talk or our email to the public to say that here's our CCNR for this year, and we can add that in though at that time though.
Yeah, it seems to me there ought to be some way to provide perspective on these things. Just standing there alone, that might be quite a cause of concern for some people who, didn't have the benefit of the added context that you've just given to it. So I would at least consider that.
Thank you.
Another maybe in the same category would be the flip over to the final page on the coliform rule and so forth, and you describe we were required to conduct one level 1 assessment to identify problems and to correct any problems that were found. One level 1 assessment was completed, and when we voluntarily completed 4 corrective actions. It just kind of begs the question, almost any reader, I think, is going to say, gee, what were those corrective actions? Um, I'd love it if you could give a little more information there. A reader reads that and doesn't know whether to be concerned or not. What was the nature of the finding and so forth.
So we did the level 1 assessment with ADQ. There's a form we have to fill out for them to say what we did, what corrective actions we found or what we tried to do to see if we find the problem. We eventually actually couldn't prove the one problem we do believe caused it due to a manufacturer's issue. Just with the CCNR, with all the stuff going on in there, we didn't feel like there was enough room for everything. Otherwise, especially in the paper one we do, it's only 11 by 17 folded and stuff, and the web ones we do a little bit further. We didn't know for sure with our internal investigation if that's something we should share with the public or not, just because it was between us and ADEQ and the paper. But we can consider adding a link to it or putting more on our website with it.
I'm certainly no expert in these are hard calls to make, how much to share and how much not to. I guess I would err on the side of thinking this is the kind of thing that may lead to cynicism by some members of the public saying, oh, they swept that under the rug, they did something, but we have no idea what it was. A similar item might be higher on the page. Scientific studies have pointed to a potential link between PFAS exposure and health issues. Well, let's just say cancer. Why not? I mean, that is what's been found.
Well, so this is EPA language that we put in here. So a lot of the stuff inside our report are directed and told to us what to put in here. So there's a lot of language that we can't change.
Yeah, so I guess that's what I was pursuing. I would err on the side of a little more disclosure, but I understand your hands may be tied in some cases.
I'm going to take a counterpoint. Thank you very much for explaining this and putting this together for us. I actually read this section about the coliforms to my husband the other night at dinner after I got this lovely packet in the mail, and I thought it was entirely sufficient because the last sentence says we're not required to take any additional corrective action. So to me, that implied the corrective actions took care of what needed to happen. I'm skeptical that most members of the public would necessarily have the technical background to get into the details on what the corrective actions were, and potentially sharing more information on that could raise more questions than it answers. If this says we found something wrong, we did 4 things, we took care of it, I think for most people that might be the right balance, but that's my bias. So, because my husband's like, oh, that sounds fascinating. I'd like to know more about it. And so when I got to the end of the paragraph, he was like, okay, we're good.
Totally agree. It's a judgment call and different people will come out differently on this. I guess you heard my bias and you heard another.
Um,
Don?
Along the lines of what Robert was pointing out, uh, related to providing a little bit more clarity to some of the definitions related to PFAS. On the flip side of that table, there's a definitions uh, list. Space limits notwithstanding, would it be possible to maybe put brief descriptions of amount detected versus reporting limit as part of that definitions table?
We will take that into consideration.
Thank you.
I'm just a little more follow-up on the PFBA, PFAS compound. Do you know what time of the year that sample was taken? And was it taken at the Lake Mary water plant?
It was at the water plant. It was the 4th of 4 consecutive samples. So the prior 3 had no detections, and that one was in August.
So you took 4 different samples all at different times of the year?
Yes,
This one was taken in August.
yes.
You took one more later in the year?
No, that was the 4th and final.
The other question is, it's not regarding potable water, but do you have any idea where the regulations on reclaimed water are going for PFAS compounds right now?
I actually haven't heard anything from ADEQ in a while about where they're going with it. Last I knew, they were going to be tacking on baseline monitoring with the APP changes, the Aquifer Protection Permit for the plants. But that's, as far as I know, those new constituents for the APP changes have not been um, adopted yet. So I don't think the baseline started, but that's the last I know.
Any other comments from the commission?
I think the report is great.
I do as well, and I recognize we've got 9 pages here and an awful lot of information that you're trying to get into those 9 pages, especially when we get into details about any corrective actions that have been taken. And, there could be a potential for putting in something that refers to the website or something like that for further explanations, so we don't have to add more to the consumer confidence report. And I also understand what Rob's concerns about. It's a communication tool, and we certainly want to be completely transparent and honest on everything we have in there with regards to our testing results for the public. But we don't want to cause unnecessary concerns because we do have good water here in Flagstaff. So, okay, I don't think we have any more comments. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
the presentation and the discussion on it.
Thank you.
Appreciate you bringing it to us. Okay, let's go on to item B, 2025 Water Production Plan and Project Updates. Brian?
Good evening, Commissioners. Brian Hunsinger, Water Production Manager. I have a handful of projects to talk about, as well as the Water Production Plan for 2025. Here's an overview of my presentation. Some of these projects are underway. Some of these projects are in design. Some of these projects have not hit the street. So just an overview of everything I'll be going through. First off, with 2025 water production plan, unlike the previous couple years, this spring, we did not receive a whole lot of infill into Upper Lake Mary. In fact, we started the year at 35% and have only dropped to the current level of about 26%. You can see the 2024 actual production. We did pretty well with surface water production, producing nearly 970 million gallons, or 36% from Upper Lake Mary. 2024 is going to look a little different. We'll be cutting that surface water production in half, or only targeting about 400 million gallons, about 15% from Upper Lake Mary. We'll be nearly doubling the supply from Woody Mountain Wellfield from 17% in 2024 to 31% in 2025. Also nearly doubling our Lake Mary groundwater supply. So in general, relying more heavily on groundwater than surface water with what little we have left in Upper Lake Mary. It's not a good year for surface water production, but it will be a good year to deal with our Upper Lake Mary Dam spillway. For the last 7 or 8 years, Arizona Department of Water Resources has recommended that we deal with the concrete spalling of the spillway. You can see here in these up-close pictures. When the lake level is below 40%, we can touch both sides of the dam. So this spring is a great time to deal with the dam. We have Kier Civil or Pride Development and Construction planning on completing those repairs this spring. Moving on to our Lake Mary Water Treatment Plant Sedimentation Basin Rehabilitation. This project's been in the works for a while. A brief history of that: in 2014, the Water Infrastructure Master Plan by NCS engineers identified the said basins as the highest priority, needing attention in water production. In 2017, we did a condition assessment by Brown and Caldwell, which found severe corrosion and degradation with equipment near twice its design expected lifespan. In 2020, we went through a design of the rehabilitation of the basins with Brown and Caldwell. Though after that design was complete, a solicitation was canceled due to budgetary reasons. In 2022, we went back through the design to tighten up the specifications. A solicitation after that was also canceled due to budgetary reasons. So it's good at this point to be with PCL. We awarded them the pre-construction phase services for the project. PCL is currently working on those pre-construction designs, and you'll most likely be hearing about guaranteed maximum prices, or GMPs, moving forward with the project later this year. For those of you unfamiliar with the sedimentation basins, here's just an overview. We'll basically be dealing with all of this infrastructure, replacing the flocculations, the sludge collector, infrastructure, all of the concrete supporting walls, structures, adding a static chemical mixer. A little hard to look at. This is some pictures of the existing infrastructure. Like I said, near twice the design lifespan. You can see the concrete coating has dissolved over the years with low pH water. You can see the aggregate, the existing sludge collectors from the 60s. Moving forward with the Lake Mary Water Treatment Plant master meter replacement. Brief history of that: in 2017, Carollo engineers did a technical memorandum of all water production flow meters. They found the current insertion mag meter was installed incorrectly or poorly with insufficient velocity at only 0.3 feet per second. 3 feet per second was recommended. In 2017, later on, Carollo then designed a replacement master meter for the treatment plant. All water from the Lake Mary wellfield, in addition to surface water, passes through this flow meter. Carollo's design included a new vault with smaller size to increase the velocity, increase the accuracy and precision of the meter. However, in 2019, a solicitation for that was canceled due to budgetary reasons. In 2020, we at least replaced the insertion mag meter. That's worked pretty well. It took quite a few tweaks and adjustments, but that meter failed in the fall of last year. So we've awarded in 2024 Kier Civil to the design completed by Carollo in 2017 to replace the master meter at the plant with the vault. And CARE is currently collecting supplies, materials necessary for the project. They're hoping to complete that this fall. Here's the design by Crollo Engineers. This is where our current insertion mag meter is located. We'll be reducing the pipe size, like I said, to 18-inch. This is where a full flanged mag meter will go with a 18-inch bypass. Moving on to 27-inch raw water pipeline replacement. We get water from Upper Lake Mary through our raw water pump station. This travels through a 27-inch concrete cylinder pipe installed in the 60s with a design lifespan of 50 years. Over the last 20 years, we've had about 8 failures in the pipeline. Recently, or 4 or 5 years ago in the fall of 2020. Currently, we have the pipeline partially draining overnight, leading to operational air issues with air in the pipeline. Looking forward to a request for a statement of qualifications to design a replacement pipeline coming up later this year.
Brian?
Go ahead.
On the 27-inch raw water pipeline, is the plan to remove that and replace it with new pipe or abandon that pipe in place?
A lot of those decisions haven't really been made yet. I think one of the latest was to do a parallel pipeline, leave the 27-inch where it is and replace it with possibly a smaller, maybe a different material pipeline. So basically a parallel replacement, leaving the 27 in place, but essentially abandoned.
I know the elevation at the Lake Mary Water Treatment Plant, I think, is a little higher than the lake itself, the crest of the dam. And I was just kind of trying to think out of the box when I was looking at this project, if there is any potential for using that old pipeline to put water back into Lake Mary.
Possibly. There's also an even older, I think, asbestos concrete pipeline, 12-inch perhaps, that was abandoned a while ago that you could perhaps do the same thing with.
Just a thought. So, okay, that's all I had. Go ahead.
And these are just some pictures from the repair in 2020. This was an emergency repair, unfortunately happened when we had another one of our sources, the Woody Mountain well field, down for a project. This, you can kind of see the composition of that 27-inch pipe, the outside concrete, the bands, really thin gauge of steel, about 1/8 of an inch thick. And then this was the spool that we replaced after this was removed. Moving on to tank maintenance project, I'd hoped to have before after pictures for you, but this project was stalled this last winter, both for weather as well as the paint system. The paint supplier had some issues they had to work out with the contractor. On the upper left, you have our Woody Mountain well field, Woody Mountain booster station 4 bay. On the lower left, our Kinlani tank. In the center is the Buffalo Park tank. That's a reclaimed tank. All the other 3 are potable water. And then on the lower right, and probably the tank in worst shape, our Railroad Springs #1. You can see rust starting to occur on the top. This project was awarded to Southwest Tank and Steel last year. Like I said, due to some weather and paint issues, there was some delays. Just last Friday, the contractor, along with the paint supplier, came up with a solution. Involves rolling on the top coat of the paint, which is just fine. That was going to be necessary for Buffalo Park tank in any case because of proximity to people and whatnot. And according to contractors, this is the same paint system used on the Golden Gate Bridge, so it should leave all these tanks in really good shape for 20 years. Lastly, the Buffalo Park tank, after it receives the paint system, will be getting a mural from Beautification Arts and Sciences.
Brian,
Go
is the
ahead.
plan to paint the inside of the tanks as well?
No, this is just exterior.
Just exterior? Have we looked at the inside of the tanks?
We have all of our tanks inspected, cleaned routinely by divers. So all of these tanks have been cleaned to my knowledge. I think Lee handled the Buffalo Park tank recently, but all of our tanks are inspected and cleaned routinely by divers.
I just wonder what the condition of the paint is on the inside.
As far as Railroad Springs, a lot better than the outside, but I haven't heard anything terribly alarming
Okay.
from divers on the inside.
All right, thank you.
Outside's a little easier to deal with. We can do all these tank projects or paintings with the tanks in service. Inside's a little more tricky to deal with. Typically, you have to drain the tank for some of these tanks, such as Buffalo Park. I'm not sure that how we'd get around that, being the main supplier source for the reclaim system. Railroad Springs, we have 2 tanks, so we could potentially take one of those down, but just depends on the tank whether we can go without it. Moving on to the interbasin waterline restoration. Most of you are aware of the pipeline fire in 2022 and the resulting devastation to the pipeline. Here you see the pipeline strung across this drainage at point I. Hunter was mobilized in 2023. This is before they got to work on what became Site I. This is after Hunter repaired Site I along with the pipeline. Another location, if any of you are familiar with our interbasin cabin, Abanaw Weir House. This is before any construction. And Site A, after Hunter added culverts as concrete. In general, Hunter's been doing an amazing job. This project was funded by the Arizona Department of Forestry and Fire Management. Just excellent project management with David Peterson, Stacy Breckler-Nags. Hunter's been receiving award after award, starting with a safety award they received first, then also Project of the Year from the Arizona General Contractors Association, Water System Project of the Year from the Arizona Water Association, and Public Works Project of the Year, Disaster Emergency Construction Repair from the American Public Works Association. Hunter's currently at work on the mountain. They nearly got blown off earlier in the week and had to halt their work, but they've been just doing an amazing job over the last couple of years. They have a couple sites to wrap up. They currently have the pipeline removed for one of these sites, but just in general doing an amazing job. They're hoping to wrap up the project by this fall. And moving on to Arizona Public Service or APS Public Safety Power Shutoffs, Events, and Backup Power. Last spring or the spring of 2024, APS announced PSPS events as part of their wildland fire mitigation strategy. Unfortunately, this would or will de-energize 75% of the city's potable water supplies. That's the Woody Mountain Wellfield, Lake Mary Wellfield, and Raw Water Pump Station. Raw Water Pump Station pumps both groundwater from the Lake Mary Wellfield and surface water from Upper Lake Mary, which is a big hit. Local wells were going to be unaffected by the PSPS events. Fortunately, we've been working on backup power since 2018 in water services. Back then, we installed backup power infrastructure at the Raw Water Pump Station, Lake Mary Water Treatment Plant, Railroad Springs Booster Station, and North Reservoir Filtration Plant. Purchased 5 of these generators to deploy, like you see on the map on the left, 2 at the Raw Water Pump Station, 2 at the Lake Mary Water Treatment Plant, and 1 to be shared between the North Reservoir Filtration Plant and Railroad Springs. It's not a catastrophic power outage that APS has relayed. And so with local wells and the Lake Mary Water Treatment Plant unaffected, we're able to kind of pivot with the backup power that we've purchased and installed in the past. Lee was part of a test of the Raw Water Pump Station with the backup power generator just a month or so ago. We found out that that only really requires a single generator. With the other locations not needing generators, we're then able to use those in the Woody Mountain Wellfield. We're currently underway installing backup power infrastructure, how you connect these generators in the wellfield where power drops from above ground to below ground at our Woody Mountain well number 6. That work is underway. Once that is completed, we should be able to power half the well field, or roughly 2.5 million gallons per day, with 4 of these generators. That makes the picture look a lot better. In addition, with local wells unaffected by PSPS events, surface water from Upper Lake Mary on backup power through the raw water pump station, Woody Mountain well field with about half the well field. It's just a much better looking pie.
Yeah, I'm not sure I um, heard you mention. So the backup power supplies, are they purchased or rental?
Those are purchased. In over the years, 2019 through 2020, we purchased 5 of these 350 kilowatt trailer mounted diesel powered generators.
So you kind of answered my next question. What's the power source for the generators? And you just said diesel.
Yes.
Is there any potential for using cleaner energy resource as a supply for the generators?
Such as?
Um, Solar, wind?
Um, sure.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner. We have looked into it a little bit. Councilmember Spence asked if we could power them with hydrogen fuel. There are some concerns with that because the supply chain just isn't there with hydrogen in the United States at this point. A solar field would be a massive array. Just to give you an idea, Tut Hill well is not the well that's going to be de-energized, but the mayor asked this question also, could we run them on batteries? And I just did a kind of quick math, and taking Ford Explorer electric vehicle batteries, you would need, I think, 1 1/3 semi-trailers completely packed full of those batteries to run 24 hours, just the one well. So we've explored it a little bit, but diesel currently is the most reliable source that we have for an emergency situation as this.
Thank you.
Could these backup power or these sources of power, the diesel generators, could they be used in the event of a fire in case, could you work those into your resiliency plans? If you lost power, say to the Woody Mountain well field, you could bring these in or stage them in a place where they would be fire resilient?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so currently Brian is working on that project to be able to energize the lower half of the Woody Mountain well field with these generators. In the event of a catastrophic fire, it would really just depend on what happens to the existing infrastructure. A lot of our distribution lines are overhead in our well fields, not all of them, but some of them, those could potentially be damaged. But Brian has installed the ability to run which wells on diesel?
In Woody Mountain or in general?
Is Lake Mary 8? I'm drawing a blank on this one.
We don't have, before this Woody Mountain groundwater infrastructure deployment, we only have one groundwater well in the city of Flagstaff, our shop well that has backup power capabilities. Before this, there's nothing in the Woody Mountain, Lake Mary, or elsewhere. We do have a manual transfer switch. I'm sorry, I take that back, at our McAllister well. On the smaller side, only about 270 gallons a minute. So this is a big step forward as far as backup power for groundwater in general, with, like I said, the capability of producing 2.5 million gallons per day.
Yeah, I had a question. Is there any areas that are going to be out of water with this PSPS event? Because I know it can be up to 20 hours outage.
Not if we can help it. We have quite a bit of water in storage, about 22 million gallons. Depending on the time of year, there can be anywhere from 1.5 to 3 days of storage, of water in storage alone. With local wells unaffected, the ability to run raw water pump station, and now with Woody Mountain, we'll be in pretty good shape. So I'd say, no, we shouldn't run out of water for PSPS events. Were you asking about power or water?
I was asking about water, but,
Okay,
you know, it goes
Just
hand in
check.
hand.
yep. It could happen at any moment. 20, like I said, APS mentioned that the spring of last year. And so it could happen tomorrow.
They do give us 5 days notice as this event is approaching. So they have a meteorologist on staff who's looking for certain criteria, soil moisture content, winds, and a few other variables. And they'll give us a 5-day notice saying this could be approaching. They'll give us a 3-day notice saying, yeah, this is still coming. And then from there, it's 2 days, 1 days, and you better get ready.
And so that's in our favor. For a lot of the year, we keep system storage closer to 80%. Sometimes we'll maybe increase that to 85%. If we get close to 90%, we'll start overflowing reservoirs. But with a heads up from APS, we can ramp up production, increase our storage, which should extend the time that we have in storage alone. So it's good to be in good communication with APS, like Lee was saying, with the advance notice, be able to deploy these generators, make connections, ramp up storage, do what we can. Any other questions? Last topic, and one I did not include on the staff summary, our Tut Hill combined well house design. Tut Hill well number 1. You can see kind of inside the racetrack at Tut Hill is the city's hands down best groundwater well. That was drilled back in 2008, I believe, with an estimated capacity near 1,500 gallons per minute. Ever since, we've had it governed at about 1,150 gallons a minute because of constraints at the well house. In 2021, we drilled Tut Hill number 2 and tested. That one tested at about 425 gallons per minute. We're underway with Corello engineers to reconfigure the well house to take in both Tut Hill 1 and Tut Hill number 2. We first went through a design matrix to Corello helped us make the decision whether to do 2 standalone well houses or a single reconfigure the existing well house. We decided to reconfigure the existing well house. It was built with the potential to bring in another well. This is a little exciting, I think, in that not only do we need to bring Tut Hill number 2 into the system, and so reconfiguring the well house will enable that, but we'll also hopefully be able to unleash Tut Hill number 1 and gather more gallons per minute, taking that 1,100 hopefully up closer to the tested capacity of 1,500 gallons a minute, or a combined flow of about 2,000 gallons a minute, which is significant and as much or more than the entire Lake Mary well field combined. Sure. Our wells serve as supply. They also serve as chlorination points. There's a couple wells that we have. If the wells go down, we'll lose chlorine residual water quality. We have that on the east side of town with our shop well. On the west side of town, our Tut Hill well. For those reasons, we're always running our Tut Hill and shop wells. If those wells go down, we start to see issues with the chlorine residuals. There's also times when keeping all these sources, we have too much groundwater coming in and we're not able to maximize groundwater as much as we can. I think Lee was alluding to the redundancy of Tut Hill number 2. Once this is brought into the system, added to the well house, we'll have redundancy. And so if something happens with Tut Hill 1, we'll be able to fire up Tut Hill 2. That's huge. Hoping for the same type of redundancy on the east side of town for Shopwell. But it'll also enable us, since the well is a little bit smaller, tested at a lower flow rate, we'll be able to decrease groundwater when there's times a year we'd really like to maximize surface water production. Is that what you were looking for?
Brian, I'm not familiar with the well, what we have out there now at Fort Tuthill, but is there a booster station there?
Yes.
Okay, so,
Um,
and is there degasification that takes place on the water that comes from the wells?
Yes.
Okay,
Most of our local wells have a well head. The groundwater well pumps the water out of the ground and then to a clear well or a storage tank.
Yeah.
I think that's about 30,000 gallons at the Tut Hill Well House. And then the well house or entry point to the distribution system also has a booster pump. That's the way all of our local wells are set up: McAllister Well, Rio Well, Continental Well, all of them. Exception to that is like our Woody Mountain well field where the wells all pump to a Woody Mountain booster station or a centralized entry point to the distribution system. And then if need be, are pumped into town. Most of our local wells though have their own storage tanks and booster pumps. And the storage tank does serve as degasification.
great. Thank you. Any more questions? Rob?
Brian, could you describe just, or give an overview of the concern you expressed about the residual chlorine levels? I guess I don't understand the mechanics of how that works and how that's related to the Tut Hill wells.
I'd say it's really just proximity. The Tut Hill well is our furthest source to the west. And like Lee mentioned, I think I did in our Pinedale neighborhood. If we don't have Tut Hill running, the next source is the Lake Mary Water Treatment Plant, and it's just a little too far away. There's maybe a little more chlorine demand in surface water. And so it's really just a proximity of sources, as well as maybe some residential places such as Pinedale that are just far enough out of the system that they really need sources nearby to chlorinate the water.
Okay, so the concern is that the chlorination levels drop too low?
Yes.
Any more questions?
Brian, I guess I have one more, and this is just another quick education. And I guess it gets to how you actually control your water production from the surface water sources. And what I'm thinking of here is your Lake Mary master meter replacement project. And how do you actually use that meter? I mean, is it used directly in the controls in any sense, or is it just a data collection point? And I'm asking that because I assume your metering as you leave the plant and so forth, you're metering probably at quite a number of locations. And so how does that master meter figure into the whole control system?
We do have some redundancy in metering. And so for our wells, for example, we have flow meters at each of our Lake Mary groundwater wells. The water from those will come to the treatment plant where we then have a Lake Mary groundwater master meter. That water then combines with surface water and is pumped into town through the overall master meter. So water from a Lake Mary well, for example, will pass through 3 meters. The meter at the wellhead, the master meter for groundwater well, and then the master meter at the plant. And so there is some redundancy. We're able to use, as far as tracking gallons, other meters to make up for that. But the master meter at the plant is also control based or reliant. The pumps that we have at the Lake Mary Water Treatment Plant require that meter for their logic PLC SCADA type control that dictates when those pumps come on, what they, the speed that they're at. And so we've been doing without that, using manual control from staff and operations to operate those pumps since the meter's been out of service since last fall. So I'm not sure if that answered your question, but both, the master meter that I'm talking about replacing, both dictates the pumps that operate at the Lake Mary Water Treatment Plant, as well as the final read of water from both the Lake Mary well field and surface water going into town.
Yeah, that was helpful. So it is directly involved, that master meter is directly involved in the control of pump operations.
Yes.
I see. Okay. I didn't know where the controls came from. So good.
Any more questions from the commission for Brian? Yes.
For the water line work coming down from the inner basin, when the project is complete, does that mean we'll be able to deliver water to the North Reservoir?
Yes, and we have. Hunter repaired the pipeline after mobilizing in the summer of 2023. We were able to use the pipeline, harvest water that summer. We produced not much, but about 8 million gallons off the mountain into drinking water, and also fill our exposed reservoir, if that's what you're talking about, from the early 1900s. We don't use those exposed reservoirs, especially the one that leaks. We don't use that for anything. But the western one, we do store water that's not used for drinking water purposes, for firefighting primarily. Yeah, I've mentioned it before, but that's been used for all of the wildland fires in Flagstaff over the last couple decades, the Schultz Museum pipeline. I think for the museum fire, they did as many as 120 helicopter dips per day out of that exposed reservoir. So no, the interbasin pipeline serves many purposes, and one of those is to fill that storage reservoir that we also use to top off Francis Short Pond after cleaning the pond.
Is there any water coming down the line right now, or is it pretty limited?
Not at the moment, because Hunter has the pipeline removed at that site 2 that was on their brochure while they extend the road. I think before that, we were starting to see a little bit of flow. Currently, they have that diverted, probably going into Lockett Meadow. But after they're finished with that site 2, we should see water flowing down. We did pretty good after filling Francis Short Pond at filling that storage tank back up. That holds currently about 20 million gallons. We're only about a foot or 2 from topping that off at the moment. So we're in good shape for this fire season with water in that reservoir.
Okay, if there's no more questions, Brian, thank you for the good presentation and the update. Very good. We'll move on to item 5C, and I think we're going to have a discussion from Troy on the solids handling at the Rio de Flag plant.
Good evening, Water Commission. My name is Troy Dagenhart. I'm the wastewater treatment manager for the city of Flagstaff. We're going to be going through the solids treatment at Rio de Flag. All right, so how we got here. The city of Flagstaff is currently working towards implementing solids handling at the Rio de Flag reclamation facility. The project design began in 2022 with Waterworks engineering firm. The original scope was to build 2 digesters and a dewatering facility. Cost models came in at roughly $60 million. Significant cuts in value engineering rescoped the project for 1 digester and a dewatering facility. Cost models came in at roughly $36 million. With the rescope project being still significantly over budget, Water Services looked at 2 options: continue to send solids into the collection system to Wildcat, or look into other more cost-effective solids handling technologies at Rio. All right, let's look back. In 1982, Wildcat was expanded to the treatment plant as we know today, minus the additions of the IFAS activated sludge process, 1 secondary clarifier, solids thickening, and solids geobag dewatering. The Rio de Flag reclamation plant was built in 1993 upstream in the collection system of the Wildcat Hill wastewater treatment plant. Designed with 2 trains, each designed for 2 million gallons per day. Designed to produce A+ reclaimed water. Water conservation efforts has continuously increased wastewater concentration to Rio and Wildcat. Wildcat Hill design. In 1982, it was designed for an average dry weather flow of 6 million gallons per day, with a peak dry weather flow of 12 million and a peak wet weather flow of 20 million. Loadings were BOD, biochemical oxygen demand, of 10,800 pounds per day, and suspended solids 10,800 pounds per day. On this chart, you can see the design on the left, 6 million gallons per day, pounds 10,800. In 1987, 5 years after the design of Wildcat Hill, the flow was 4.91 MGD with pounds loading of 8,407. In 1997, 5 years after the Rio de Flag plant, the flow is 4.42 MGD with the loading of 12,235 pounds per day. In 2002, 4.19 with the loading of 15,320. 2007, 3.35 with the loading of 17,491. And for 2024, 3.177, 18,309 pounds per day.
You should make a graph of that.
As you can see from the graph, design, 10,800 is the orange line, with the blue line being the actual pounds per day. You can see the increase over the years. Below is the flow, MGD, same thing. Now it's going down. The addition of Rio de Flag plant. In 1993, the Rio plant went online upstream of Wildcat, designed to take flow, treat wastewater to reclaim water standards, and return the solids back into the collection system. Rio is designed to treat 3,970 pounds per day at 2 MGD. As of 2024, the plant treats 5,600 pounds per day at 2.2 MGD. Since the addition of the Rio plant, the Wildcat Hill plant has seen a reduction in flows, which is beneficial. However, a detrimental increase in solids loading in the following years to Wildcat. The reduction in flows to Wildcat can be attributed to both water conservation and the addition of the Rio plant. The increase of solids to Wildcat can be attributed to the increase in solids produced by the Rio plant and the expansion of City of Flagstaff and the surrounding areas. The solids loading into the Rio plant is as expected, 5,600 pounds per day. Removing only these solids from the collection system wouldn't decrease the loading on the Wildcat Hill plant by much. However, with the Rio plant being an activated sludge process, the total solids wasted to the collection system, primary clarifier sludge and waste activated sludge, is double than what it is being fed into the plant. With the 2024 annual average of 11,200 pounds per day wasted to the collection system. If we take those solids out, 11,200 pounds per day, we can then project the loading into Wildcat, and right here it'd be 7,000 pounds per day. All right, solids dryer dehumidifier. After realizing that the digester options were too expensive, staff investigated other technologies and alternatives. The technology we discovered was the Cinchi dewatering and dryer unit. The dryer, a low temperature sludge treatment unit, combines dehumidifying and energy recovery. This utilization of energy means there is no waste of any heat during the drying process. Staff piloted this process at the Wildcat Hill plant during the piloting of the dewatering screw press and dryer. The facility was able to meet an average of 18% solids processed from the screw press, passing the paint filter test required to be landfilled. In addition, the dryer was able to meet the 90% total percent solids and total coliform reduction needed to meet EPA alternative criteria for Class A biosolids. Here's a photo. That's my hand. That's the dried material from the Shinchi dryer. I think some of you were there at the piloting. All right, digester versus dryer. A digester is more expensive with concrete tanks, takes up more space, relies on bacteria. Canned foam presents safety hazards with methane gas, is messy and heavily operator dependent. The dewatered material will only achieve 15 to 20% solids. Moving these solids to the Wildcat Hill DLD, dedicated land disposal, or the landfill would be more expensive, estimating 4 to 5 20-yard roll-off bins per week. Achieves Class B EPA biosolids standards. The dewatering and dryer unit works by dewatering the raw material, skipping the digestion process. Material is dewatered to 15 to 20%. The dewatered material is then fed to the dryer to achieve 90 to 97% solids. Meets Class A EPA biosolids standards. Allows for the removal to the landfill or Wildcat DLD, is easier to operate, less expensive, less messy. Estimates 1 to 2 roll-off bins per week. Also is ready for biochar in the future. %60 plans we got for the Shinchi dryer over at Rio plant. As you can see, there would be 2 units. If we were to continue to run only 2 MGD through the Rio, we'd only use 1 of these units. If we were to expand the plant to 4 MGD as designed, we could run them both. Totally enclosed building with odor control. Sludge would enter at the top here through the screw press, mix the primary and the WAS, dewater it, it'd drop down in the chute, it would go through the dryer, and then come back around and go into the roll-off. Okay, summary. Removing roughly 11,000 pounds of solids with the Shinchi dryer at the Rio plant will return Wildcat to the original loading design criteria, less than 10,800 pounds per day. Will allow Wildcat staff to take a digester offline for rehabilitation and produce EPA Class A biosolids, making the solids ready for a potential biochar facility in the future. Drying the solids to greater than 90% will reduce operational hauling costs. Questions?
Troy, we saw the price estimates for the digesters. Where are we at with the Shinsi dryer project?
I believe it's 18 to 24 million.
We had PCL give us an estimate a few months ago, and it's 18 million with about 6 million in contingencies. This puts us at about 22 to 24 million. We're reaching out to PCL again to go to a more updated cost estimate now that we have 60% plans.
So it's considerably less than the digesters.
Yeah, about at this point, about 10 million less than building one digester, or a half or third of the price of two digesters.
Okay. Questions?
Have you guys looked at a comparison to the operating costs for each method?
It's going to be significantly, it's going to be a significant amount of electricity to run it. Each unit is 600 amps at 480 volts. It's about $1,000 a day to run one unit.
How much did you say per daily?
Approximately $1,000 per day.
$1,000 a day?
Yeah, we ran the numbers though, and with the cost savings with the digesters, it puts us at about a 30-year ROI, Troy? Is that what we came up with?
Yeah, it's actually, so if, it's 700 to 1,000 per day. If it was $700 per day, it'd be $250,000 per year times 30 is $7 million in 30 years. And then if you go up another 30, be 14 million. So it would take a long time to get up to whatever 64 million, 60 million for the digesters.
What would it cost to run the digesters?
I'd have to go look, I could look at the Wildcat budget and see, I don't have that number off the top of my head.
I understand it's kind of blended together a little bit, I'd guess, but.
It would be good to look at a comparison projected out, over 30 years or whatever, comparing both the projects that takes into account operating cost and power and everything else. But it still sounds like it's a cost savings going with the Shinse dryers. And I know I had an opportunity to go out and see the one that was in the pilot operation out at Wildcat, and it was pretty impressive.
Yeah, we liked it.
And we did look into solar drying. It just takes a huge amount of real estate, and it works really well in our climate for about 6 months a year, but it would still need some sort of an additional heat source for the winter months, whether that's electric or gas. So there is a cost there also. And given the limited amount of space at the Rio plant, we opted for the Shinse dryer because of the compact footprint.
Rob?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, I guess one new element of your proposal is to take dried solids to the landfill, which would be a new practice for Flagstaff. Have the landfill people reviewed that, and are they happy about that?
We have reached out to them, and it's hard to tell how happy those people are, but no, I'm just kidding. No, they're okay with it. I know Williams takes their sludge out there, and who's the other one? Forest Highlands does. So there's others that already do it.
Okay, so there's
As long as it passes a paint filter test and a T-clip test, they're okay with it.
I may have missed it earlier. New topic. I may have missed it earlier in your presentation, but now that you've made the leap of going from digesters to the Shinse dryers, is it obvious that it's optimum to put the dryers at Rio, or might it make sense to put the dryers at Wildcat? Have you done that trade-off?
I think removing the solids at Rio would be the better choice right now. And I think the Rio plant's kind of small enough that it's kind of perfect for the Rio plant. It's not a big plant.
Is that just a sizing issue for when you say it's perfect?
It's just a lot of plants down in Phoenix. They do their dewatering and stuff. They don't even have digesters, and they're about the same size as maybe Rio. Maybe Rio's just a little bit bigger, but like the Fountain Hills plant, it's a small plant.
it takes some of the loading off of the collection system as well in that trunk line that goes down the Rio de Flag to Wildcat.
Okay, so you're persuaded Rio's the right place to take it from?
For
We
now.
do think so, yeah.
So
I mean, it wouldn't count out at Wildcat in the future, but we already have digesters over at Wildcat.
Yeah. With the Shinsi dryers, I know this is a wild card for everyone, but do you know the impact of tariffs yet?
Well, I know we have a 90-day reprieve, so. That's the last I heard.
Better hurry up and get that purchase order out.
Yeah.
Is Miranda ready to sign the purchase
Let's
order?
write the check.
The cost is significant with the tariffs, but we have heard from Greg Miller there might be one or two in our country already pre-tariff that we might be able to buy. So we're still working through that.
Are there a lot of these Shinsi dryers in operation in the Southwest?
They are for like, I think they're milk plants or.
There's a casino in California on the border, and there's a couple like dairies or milk plants, but nothing this large. And there's a larger installation in Orlando, Florida, but I don't know the MGD on that plant.
I will tell you, after our piloting, the Camp Verde folks went down, told their folks, and they're ordering one as well.
Camp Verde is?
Yes.
Interesting. Have we had any discussions with any of these areas that are operating these Shinsi dryers to, get a take on their experience, and are they happy with them?
Well, we went down and we visited the one in Yuma. Yeah, they worked great down there.
Okay. And what's the application on the one in Yuma?
It's just a real small plant. It had a dewatering and a dryer unit off the end. So
okay, but it's a wastewater treatment plant.
Yes, it's a wastewater treatment plant. Yeah, EMLR plant.
Okay.
So if this works out really well at the Rio plant, would it impact your plans on rehabbing one of the digesters at Wildcat?
Yes, if we got this going at the Rio, we could take one digester offline for rehabilitation. Right now, we can't take one offline because we wouldn't be able to meet our permit needs with just one digester.
I guess my question is, do you need to have a digester? Can it be replaced, or do you need the digester to get rid of like nitrogen, organic compounds in the water coming out of the Wildcat plant?
No, you don't need a digester.
Currently, as built, we do.
Well, I mean, we need a digester at the Wildcat Hill, but we don't. I mean, if we got a dryer and a dewater, that takes the place of the digester. Is that? Yeah, is that what you're gonna? Yeah.
Our engineering section director, Mac, reached out to, I believe, Corollo engineers and a few others at AZ Water last month. And he said that the digestion of sludge is really used currently in plants that are greater than 14 MGD. The amount of methane produced allows you to generate electricity and heat to run those digesters. Smaller plants are using alternative technologies.
What would be the savings if you could avoid rehabbing the digester for the city?
I don't know that we can avoid rehabbing the digester. We're hoping to get at least 10 more years out of Wildcat, and those digesters, I don't know if you've walked around on the roof of them, but it's a little spooky.
Yes, one more.
Any more questions? Rob?
One more. In your evaluation of alternatives, I've been familiar a little bit with the progression to Shinsi and so forth. There have also been proposals about using microscreens on the incoming sewage flow and so forth. And reputedly, the microscreens can get to a moisture level that would allow you to go directly to landfill and avoid the actual active drying step. Have you seriously had any opportunity to seriously look at the microscreens as an alternative technology?
I had a meeting with Commissioner Nauman last week and Ward Davis, and as we go into review of the 60% plans, Mac and I are going to, do you mind going back to the pictures, Troy?
Yeah.
If you look up top, the screw presses are above the dryers, and there's a metal grating that they sit on, and we're going to ask that they extend that grating out at least 10 feet to accommodate a 7-foot cubed micro screen should we go that way in the future. And then we talked about piloting one of them at our wastewater plant here in the next couple months.
Piloting a microscreen?
That's correct.
Yeah, that it seems that if that's actually a real alternative, it would be appropriate to test that as soon as possible. It might avoid the whole step of going to the Shinsi dryers.
Yeah, so keeping in mind that we're a large organization and the sustainability department or division is looking at biochar as a way of disposing of this and mixing it with the forest mulch that comes in. The Shinsi dryer does produce a very good feedstock for those biochar units should we go that way. But I agree, the drier you can get it at before it goes into that dryer, the more we're going to save on those electrical costs. Or if at some point we decide to avoid it, maybe we just reroute the auger. But I think looking at the bigger picture, biochar is a direction that the city is looking to go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any more questions from the commission? Troy, thank you for the presentation.
Oh, I
Good
think she
presentation.
had.
Oh, Karen,
Just,
sorry.
That's okay. Thank you for the presentation. I think I just didn't catch it. What is the time frame for the next steps? So,
Well, right now it's 60% plans, and we'll I'll hand this one off.
Having just gotten the 60% plans last week, we're still kind of working through it, but hoping 18 months before we look into beginning construction.
I don't know if I should say this or not, but this is probably the most important big project you have going now, and you might explain to the commission why it's important.
If Troy could go back to that slide with the graphs on it. We have a solids problem in the city and we need to handle it in some way or another. Having explored different avenues, Troy's math is showing us that this will take us back to almost the 1987 loading on Wildcat plant, which could buy us some time on the rehabilitation or construction of a new plant, which is incredibly expensive. Having kind of come into this project here, we need to get rid of the solid somehow, and we're looking for an efficient way to do it. And I know this is operationally expensive, but it's less upfront less capital costs upfront.
Yeah, another question. I guess following on this topic, by reputation or hearsay, the city is approaching its solids handling limit, which in the extreme case could put a halt to all construction in the city. Has that been, where do we stand on that type of, on that dimension?
There's fuzzy numbers sometimes. I don't know if fuzzy numbers is the right word. It depends on what modeling you look at and what growth you look at for our city, whether it's 1% growth over the next 20 to 30 years, whether it's 1.2 or 1.4. We're in a good spot right now. If we can get the solids out at the Rio plant, it puts us in a good spot for several years to come while we work out the new plant at the Wildcat facility. Does that answer your question?
Well, I wondered if we had a nearer term emergency, in essence, that we might bump up against solids handling limits such that we have to say no to construction in the city. At least there have been words to that effect. And I guess I'm asking to find out how real those are.
I can't give you an exact answer on that. We have contingencies in place. We can rent a screw press to dewater solids and haul them off to the landfill if that's the way we need to go. So there are other options, short-term kind of stopgap measures that we could take. I don't want to go so far as to say no. We have to put a halt to development. We have contingencies that we work with. We try to avoid it, but we have things that we can do as a workaround.
Yeah, thank you.
Lee, doesn't it all depend on how we can maintain our compliance with our permit?
Yeah, it always comes back to the permit.
Yeah.
Joe leans
Right.
behind me. I better say that.
I mean, if we're in compliance with the permit, we stay in operation.
Exactly, and there are workarounds. You don't have to digest the solid. So if we get up to a point where we have too many solids, then we've talked about renting or buying a portable screw press that takes some of the solids before digestion, and we dewater them to 18%. We haul them off to the landfill.
Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you, Troy. Good presentation and
Thank
real
you.
interesting discussion. We want to, keep up to speed on what's going on with our solids problem for sure. Let's see, we got about 5:30 and let's move on. We've got another item on the agenda, some old business. Continued discussion on reclaimed water user conservation and efficiency. And Aaron, hello.
Hello. Good evening, Chairman Doba and Commissioners. Erin Young, Water Resources Section Director, and I have with me Tamara Lawless, our Water Conservation Program Manager. And I just thought I'd open this by revisiting the marching orders from the last meeting. Wanted to touch on, what we've accomplished since the last meeting. Number one was bringing the water conservation guru to the meeting, accomplished. So one of the tasks was for staff to investigate the legal basis for sharing information on individual water usage. And we did reach out to our legal team. The first question really will be, is there a need to know what that information it is? So if the commission or the work group wishes to take an approach of, what they do in the 5MP and the AMAs, and establishing a water usage criteria per acre. Either people are in compliance or not. However, if there is a need for data to be reviewed, whether by the commission or the work group, our legal team recommended perhaps a non-disclosure agreement. And another option might be folks attending the work group meetings may elect to just share their information. On the second item, discussing how the 5MP plan works or inviting someone from ADWR to speak. We do have contacts with ADWR now on who would be good to give that presentation. It's just a matter of, if that's in front of the Water Commission or if that's in front of the work group. So as soon as we're ready to schedule something, we can do that. Third, seeing if the water conservation team can start engaging with users that we haven't developed a plan to tackle yet. Tamara has talked to users in the past, so she might be able to answer any direct questions more intelligently than I can from this opening remark set. With that, any questions on those tasks at this time before I turn it over to Tamara? Okay.
Any questions from the commission?
Thanks. Good afternoon, commissioners. Tamara Lawless, the Water Conservation Program Manager. So, when I was thinking about, what are the reasons that we might want to conserve reclaimed water? What would our goals be? The two that kind of popped up in my mind would be one, just saying, let's just say that we're going to use reclaimed water. We're going to use it as efficiently as possible. So we're going to treat it the same way we treat any other water source and just try to use it as efficiently as we can. So that might be the broader goal of this kind of discussion. And I know that also there were discussions about peak demand. So maybe we want to talk about whether or not peak reclaimed water demand should be reduced by a specific percentage, or if we have another metric, and we'll chat a little bit more about, the complexities of that as I kind of go forward. Aaron was kind enough to provide this chart here showing some trends over time by different sectors. So you can see the top row is the earlier years, 2014, and the most recent data, the 2023 data is at the bottom. You can see golf courses have gone down a little bit over that period. Manufacturing, you'll notice, went down a lot. I think that's primarily because SCA Tissue closed. They were like a big industrial user. And then you can see like municipal parks and schools kind of increasing a little bit over time. Snowball holding somewhat steady over time. Commercial NAU and Snowball all clumped together. I didn't see that. Yeah, that's interesting that NAU is in its own category separate from parks and schools. Because I feel like they tend to be like an outdoor user. Construction kind of like increasing a little bit over time, and then residential looks like it dropped a little bit over time, but they're a very, very small piece of the pie. So in terms of best practices in water conservation, so some of the things that, came up for me would be one, no irrigating between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. That's common sense. That's like if you're applying water during those times, most of it's evaporating. So it's not really a good investment, and it's also not usually great for the plants because like most plants want like a good soaking where it's getting down to the roots. So when it's evaporating rapidly, that's not ideal. We have the water conservation ordinance that, has that provision for potable water. So if we wanted to apply that same provision for reclaimed water, it would mean kind of opening up that water conservation ordinance and changing a little bit of the wording to make it clear that it applies to any irrigation regardless of type, potable or reclaimed. The next one down is equipment upgrades for optimized use. So that might mean that saying that all of the reclaimed users have weather sensing irrigation controllers, that they're not watering when it's raining, that the spray heads they have are efficient. There have been a lot of like upgrades in equipment on how spray heads apply water. We could look at whether or not some of them could install drip systems where appropriate if they're, watering things like trees and shrubs and not turf. When we talk about best practices, we also usually want to talk about water loss control. So that means looking for leaks in the system, making sure that operationally our system is tight. Checking the meters that we're using to monitor how much we're putting into the system and how much we're selling to customers and making sure those are in agreement. Doing any type of additional theft management if needed. We could also do outdoor water budgeting. So that's been something we've been kind of piloting with parks. So kind of looking at how many gallons per square foot of turf is appropriate based on kind of Flagstaff's climate and evapotranspiration, and sometimes can be like subtleties with soils, and saying like, okay, according to our calculations, this number of gallons is appropriate, and here's what you're actually applying, and trying to, come to a consensus. Also, obviously, we do turf conversions. So I know sometimes, I've talked about golf courses that do like pilot programs where the users wear like a GPS unit and they see where people actually go and figure out, are there sections of turf that are never used by the users, and then converting some of that over to native landscaping, that kind of thing. So very few of these things we have explored yet for reclaimed water. So kind of any of these could be great choices if we're just talking about let's just treat it the same as we do potable. If we're talking about doing some demand reduction, so we could also do every other day watering like we do for the potable system. That would be like a peak reduction measure. We could also do no watering Mondays. That's part of the water conservation ordinance too. We talked a little bit with Troy about the Buffalo Park tank, and he was saying that kind of like that tank is under the most kind of stress draining in the early morning hours. So it sounds like, a lot of the city parks, for example, are irrigating during the hours between like midnight and, let's say 7 a.m. And, this is something that we were kind of confused about a little bit, but it seems like flows into the system are lower at that time too, right? Most people are sleeping. So the flows into the system are low. And so the tank isn't rapidly filling, and it's also rapidly being used by the parks at that time. So maybe having like a no watering on Monday would give some time for the tank to fill, although obviously it's a finite tank. Once it's full, it's full. So to that discussion, maybe it would make sense to come up with more regimented schedules for customer uses. So I was asking Troy, like, well, if right now there's a little bit of a stress on the system in the early morning hours, should we ask parks to like pilot watering between like 8 or 9 p.m. and midnight instead? and not having them water during the early morning hours. And Troy said, I don't know, maybe it would help. We don't know. We haven't tried it yet. We could experiment. So that type of like playing with the demand are things that we have not done. It could be something, interesting to try. And at least like with parks, that's kind of internal to the city. They might be willing to say, yeah, sure, we could adjust our sprayers to try to optimize those hours of the night as opposed to the later hours of the night. So luckily Troy is here, so he can answer questions if we have any about like these. Troy's hiding. Get up here. No. Yeah, I mean, that kind of, we haven't really done any analysis on like kind of who are the users that use at like each hour of the day or day of the week. And so I think that's where it would take a little bit of study and analysis on our part if we're really interested in demand smoothing. I think there's kind of some research that needs to be done on like kind of who uses when. So I think if we want to grill Troy on that, he seems really excited about it. So we could do that. Or, that could be like a kind of like a marching order for us is to like, yeah, come do some research and come back in a few months and try to give us a sense of those kind of peaks and valleys and if it makes sense to smooth them or not. But it's kind of like for me right now, that's all kind of a black box. Don't really know what's in there, and I don't really know what we could do to smooth. So those are kind of my two ideas. And I guess I'd like to hear, like, does one type of those goals appeal to you all more than the other? Do we want to try to pursue both? Do you want to try to dig into the demands? Like what, obviously our time is finite. And so figuring out like what you want to see most or what you think is the most like productive use of our time would be important. And also I would like to hear if you think we should be making a policy change to the water conservation ordinance, because that kind of thing usually takes months, right? Kind of like getting the legal review and figuring out what words need to change and kind of what that would mean if we opened up the ordinance to revisions.
Comments? Tamara, we've got a terrific water conservation program here in Flagstaff. We've had it for years. Some of the things that we're doing, gosh, I'm amazed they're still in place from years ago when I was here. Water's water. And if we want to smooth out the demand on our reclaimed water system and reduce the peak, I don't know why we shouldn't think a little bit more about just applying what we're doing in our potable water system to our reclaimed water system, which would include, the odd even watering, no watering on Mondays and so forth. Now that's going to create some issues probably for some of our users. And I think maybe we need to find out before we would do something like this, who would have the problem with this? Is it going to be the golf courses? Is it going to be the schools? Is it going to be recreation? Whatever. And what kind of problems are those? How could we make it work for them? Some of these users, I think the issue is going to be storage, having some storage on site. And for some of them in particular, I don't know why we should provide everybody's storage. I think we need more storage. I mean, we just saw the presentation earlier today. We can't even take the Buffalo Park tank out of service to work on it on the interior because it's in operation all the time. So it tells me, gosh, we really need some redundancy as far as storage in our reclaimed water system. But nevertheless, we've got users like the golf courses that do have storage on site. If we would go to something like odd even watering or something like that, they could still water whenever they wanted to as long as they have storage there. But it would apply that they could only get water from the city on, a certain every other day or whatever. So I don't know. That's just my thoughts on it. Karen?
Thanks, Tamara.
Yeah.
I think it'd be just jumping off what Ron was saying. It'd be really interesting to understand what the implications of some of those potential choices would be. So, I mean, I think none of us would recommend a policy change without looking into what the impact would be, right? And so when you have thousands of small residential users, you can play with what people do a little bit more and it doesn't have as much of a physical impact on the system. But if you have a small handful of really big users, if you told them they could only water on certain days, what would actually happen physically to our system? Right. So I think looking into that is a great place to start, just to kind of narrow the suite of choices we have to think about. And then in that set of choices, I'd be really interested to see what the impact would be if you had people, or not people, different users restricted to watering at different times. Like what would the impact be in terms of what they were able to pull, and does that actually match what they need? And what would the impact be in terms of the ability of the system that we're working with today to deliver that water at the time that they're trying to use it? So I think not to put a ton of work on your staff, which I think is you, but I think there was a lot more information there that I think would be very interesting to take a look at before thinking about actual policy changes. Thank you.
Sure. And I know, one thing that this like tension that I have with parks is that a handful of our parks are still on potable water. So in theory, they should be under the umbrella of the water conservation ordinance. And, when we were trying to speak with them last summer about, could you guys please adhere to the every other day? They were like, listen, sometimes we have like a soccer tournament on the fields and we can't water for 5 days in a row. And then the next 5 days we need to water every day because now the grass is really thirsty. Like operationally, we just can't always adhere to the same every other day schedule that other users do. So I guess, that's another area for me to just try to understand is what are the constraints for some of those like athletic fields. Yeah.
I don't know who would answer this question, Troy or you, but do we have data for, say, summer use or production of reclaimed water over a 24-hour day, say for each month of the summer, and where those peaks and where the valleys are? And then if you have that data, then we would need to match that up with the user data and where that's going. And if we had just some rough numbers, that might tell us where we might go with all this. So, because my view is that ultimately we want to make room for a direct potable reuse plant that could be using 2 million gallons, producing 2 million gallons of water a day. I don't know, what that will ultimately be, but it would be nice to see those numbers of production versus use.
Sure.
In a 24-hour day.
Okay, I think we can do that. One question I had for Troy is when we have a situation this summer where we have to ask some customers to curtail, is that like a middle of the day peaking that's happening, or is it like, I know there's a lot of people that are using in the middle of the night, like when we are running up against the limits of the system, is there like a trend on when that usually occurs? Here he comes. Thank you.
So like she mentioned earlier, it's really early in the morning as our Buffalo Park tank drops really low because there's no flow coming into the treatment plants. Other than that, we've never really asked anyone to curtail except for when there's a plant upset going on. And then we have asked them to cut back or to actually stop altogether to save water in the tank. But it doesn't last long. If you have an upset, that water's gone in a day, so.
That's helpful. So it's more like an operational, not really a demand. That's helpful for me. Rob.
Yeah, Tamara, I don't know what level of debrief you got from the last water.
I tried to watch it, yeah,
okay.
to try to understand.
Yeah, one of the things that was discussed, and I'm looking at Don Bills here as well, but within the Reclaim Water Committee that operated this past year, we had representatives from some of the major users, and they're all very conscious of this as an issue, both for their from a cost point of view, and they know there are restrictions. And I think one of the early things, if I were you, or I would recommend, would be just having a sit down with them systematically, and not even necessarily suggesting anything at this point, but understanding where their minds are and what their plans are at this point in time, because some of them have very clear plans in mind, reducing total acreage, irrigated acreage, this, that, and the other, and getting kind of a survey of what are the ideas that are out there, reducing acreage, adding to storage capacity so that they're in more control of their timing. It'd be good to get that as a baseline. And then we can superimpose some of these other ideas, from the city side. But, because there is quite a limited number of big customers, I think really knowing the lay of the land on, the plans that they already have would be a good thing to do. Kind of be in listening mode initially, as opposed to telling mode.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we already do collaborate a ton with obviously like the city parks, the schools, NAU. Those are all like, ongoing partnerships. We haven't done as much of the golf course work, but I think that makes sense.
Yeah, and then I would just repeat what I believe John said, that, from the committee's point of view, this whole thing of demand smoothing was emphasized a lot because of this anticipation that there's maybe some point in time when the city wants to be producing direct potable reuse, and we can't have a train wreck where you put in a multi-million-dollar plant and then, there's no water available to be processed at some of the points. So the point is to get to more of a steady state. The goal would be a steady state. The ideal would be a steady state where you can plan how to operate the city plant and the customers can plan how to take their water. But, that's at least a piece of the motivation for looking into all of this and for demand smoothing.
Yeah.
But, and then the 5 MP thing is, it seems like a big deal too, that, the valley has huge reasons to be looking at this, and presumably they're ahead in their thinking of where we are, and we might as well leverage the thinking that they've already put into it. And I think it'd be wonderful to get a speaker from that group to come here at a future time.
For sure. Yeah. Aaron's coming back up.
I think one of the challenges for us in this group was what is the goal for that, for demand smoothing? Because, yeah, some of these might be best practices, but as you all just articulated and our staff, it's complicated because it's very much an on-demand system for so many users, where some have storage. So, this direct potable reuse or AWP thing in the future, are we trying to save a half a MGD and never allocate that to Purple Pipe, to like Warner's Nursery or the others who have requested that water? Or there are future customers still looking for Purple Pipe water. So would we never deliver more Purple Pipe water for, a half a MGD or a 1 MGD towards advanced water purification? Or then there's indirect potable reuse where we can use the aquifer as storage whenever we have excess water. I think for us, the question for the commission is setting a specific percentage or metric goal. And then we can work towards that goal, I think, as staff, what we're trying to gain and why, and what the offsets are, if that makes sense. So I felt like that was missing from the conversation last time. We know we want to use the water as efficiently as possible. That's easier than this demand management side. And then the other thing, the other outcome out of the guidance document to council was to keep that work group going, the reclaimed water work group. So we'll be having this kind of conversation that Tamara brought up today, with those users as well. But it was really just to define tonight. I hope to define from you or get input from you on that number 2 item. I shouldn't say number 2 with this conversation. So thank you.
Do we have potential customers that are waiting to get reclaimed water from us? We do. And we haven't provided it to them because we don't have it available. Is that correct?
Correct. We had a list going back to, I don't know, 2016, and we haven't issued reclaimed water to anyone on the list since then. We were kind of over allocated at that point in time. Looking at Jolene because she might have that list that existed then. But I heard Warner's is still wanting reclaimed water. And we have, you know, Jackson, our folks in our engineering section saying, can we allocate reclaimed water to new development or not? And we've been saying no. Whether or not the spatial location of those demands makes sense with the system or time of day or anything like that, I don't know, but there's potential for it to grow a little more.
So are we thinking if we're able to reduce the peak and smooth out our demand, that we'll be able to open up more uses for reclaimed water? Is that our intent?
It was the intent when Brad Hill was our director. You know, there was like the 8-inch bottleneck project in the Bushmaster Park area where we go from a large pipe diameter down to a small, I think back up to a large, or no, that it's small to Buffalo Park tank. The couple projects were going to gain an MGD, and then we could allocate that to some of those on the list. That was a goal for a while. And then some of those projects, a couple of them stalled out. We're working on the 8-inch bottleneck, but you know, we haven't really discussed, I think, as a utility, you know,
The new users, are they primarily interested in using the reclaimed water for irrigation?
as far as I know, yeah. Yeah, I didn't.
So it would be peak summer type usage then.
Mhm.
Is that the limitation then?
What's that? Oh, I think I can find the list, but Jolene is not familiar with it. Um,
I guess my point is
Yeah.
that we're limited by use at certain times of the year, and that's why you haven't been able to add anybody in the summertime, which is when they want the water.
Correct. That's why it was a non-issue when Snowball came. In terms of demand, we had the water. Mhm.
So,
Question.
oh, go ahead.
I want to ask that question in a little different manner. Is not having reclaimed water available a limit uh, to new growth, particularly for industrial and manufacturing customers?
I don't know if it's limited anyone. When SCA was, you know, they abandoned that site. Uh, some of our staff were trying to shop that site, you know, for the reclaim potential for manufacturing. And if they came online again today, I don't know if you guys would say yay or nay to. I think they were 2 MGD SCA. Okay, and times 1440 is 1.5, kind of MGD. Oh, so so anyway, we would have to assess, you know, I don't know that anyone's been turned away like a manufacturing or an industry, but I don't
So,
think we're advertising it either.
so for other existing potential users, like Warner's, for example, their use is going to be significantly lower than, than a new industrial manufacturer user that might be thinking about, 1 million, 2 million, uh, gallons per day, per year, or whatever the number is.
Correct. And then, you know, but the thing with SCA is we were getting water back to the system. Forgot. So, you know, we would definitely favor that kind of use that comes back.
So I guess along the lines of, load leveling and providing more storage, um, I'm wondering on the city side, golf courses do a very good job of maintaining some kind of storage on site that can be used for watering the golf course. lakes are a good example. They're an integral part of golf courses in terms of how the course is played. But I'm thinking on the city side, I seem to recall that there were some large underground storage tanks that the city had available that have fallen out of use. Uh, a couple million gallon. Am I mistaken or?
The only storage tanks that I can think of that aren't being used, well, one of them is the East Reservoir at the North Reservoir Filtration Plant. It's an open air storage tank, and it is in a state of disrepair. Not saying we couldn't rehab it, but is it 20 million capacity, Brian, with the notch in it? Has a 20 million gallon capacity.
Yeah, I thought that there were some other storage tanks on the northeast side of town that, you know, were never fully utilized or have fallen into disrepair.
There is no purple pipe up that far. Well, there's Snowbowl above that, but it's their pipeline. They own it. For us to get purple pipe water, we'd have to expand the.
Thank you.
Sorry. What are you looking for us tonight then? I see on the screen in front of me that you're looking for direction on the creation of goals for reclaimed water conservation. Draft goals could include reclaimed water is used as efficiently as possible. In my mind, that's kind of a no-brainer. Peak reclaimed water demand reduced by a specified percentage or other metric. That's kind of hard for me to put a number on that.
Yeah, and I wasn't expecting you to put a number on that tonight. Maybe table that one, but I do think for us to move forward with any initiatives that involve peak, we really should set a goal. And that's the point I wanted to make tonight. Otherwise, why are we doing peak demand measures? You know,
Yeah, so maybe we could try to get some of that data to come back in a few months and say like, okay, here's the best we could pull on like kind of monthly fluctuations and trends like Commission Member Nauman was saying, let's see some like peak usage trends and production trends and kind of look at those. We could bring that back in a few months and I could also try to bring forward like a draft of what it might look like to revise the water conservation ordinance so that we could apply some of those, like the 9 to 5 watering restrictions, things like that. So we could apply those to the reclaimed water system. I think those are two things we could kind of move forward easily with on future direction and just see how those things look. Does that sound doable?
I would very much like to see, what components of our current potable water conservation ordinance we could apply to
Yeah.
reclaim water. And, you know, not doing that right away without talking to some of our users and identifying, what kind of issues would you have if we did this? And how could we make it work? Maybe it might take a couple of years for some of these things to go into place if some of our users have to put in additional storage or modify their turf area that they're using or something like that. But I think as Rob indicated, that some of them have indicated that they're reducing their turf. And if they do that, it's going to make it easier on them maybe to comply with some conservation requirements that we might be able to put in place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I just think to kind of put a pin or a bow on it, I think number one makes sense, and we should look at that. And then maybe the reason to convene the work group is to reflect on, here's the things that we could do,
Yeah.
or a couple new ones like the outdoor water budget. I think those are really powerful tools for outdoor water users, the water budget tool. So I think that makes sense to me in terms of why you would reconvene a work group, get their feedback, get their responses to things like that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Sounds good.
Okay,
Okay. Thanks for
all
your
right,
input.
thank you. Okay, informational items to and from the chair, commission members or staff. Anything, Rob?
would it be okay to voice 2 requests for future agenda items?
Sure.
I guess I'll look at Lee as well. One, I guess a progress report on what I think of as the Katie Vanyo master plan. I think I see by the schedule here that's due in August, to be complete in August, and I'm not sure Ron was even aware of that.
No, I'm not, what was that?
The report to the Water Commission and trying to streamline the numbers, is that what you're asking about with Katie Vanyo?
You're familiar with Katie Vanyo, right?
Yes.
Yeah, she's with, is it with Hazen?
Yeah, she left. Rachel So was her partner. Is that her name? Was that her name? I think Rachel So was her partner last year. She is still with the firm, but Katie has moved on.
Okay, well, anyway, you have a big master plan being done by them. And according to the schedule here, it's due in August, I guess. And
To take a step back, so sorry, Katie Vanyo is working on our report to the Water Commission and working on streamlining some of our tables. The treatment facilities master plan, which is due in August, is being worked on by Andrea Odegaard, and she is working with Hazen.
okay, and that's the one I'm referring to. And we last heard about that, I think, roughly last August. And I think I guess I'm just voicing it would be time, in my sense, it would be timely to hear about that again, to get an update on that.
We will get you an update.
Oh.
It's getting close to completion.
Okay, and then the other is, I think I saw that the Jacobs Red Gap Ranch right-of-way Phase 2 report was finished. And so a summary of that, and then what are the next steps beyond that, especially with the Bureau of Reclamation. I believe we heard last time that the Bureau of Reclamation was likely to follow on after that Phase 2 report was complete. And I guess I'd be very interested in next steps for Red Gap Ranch investigations.
I can put both of those on the agenda for July.
The value planning? The value planning process? Yeah. Haley, anything? Don?
Sorry. Nothing else for me.
Okay. Lee?
Marion just said maybe I should send out an email. Do you want to report to the commission, just verbal, or would you prefer this information in email form? I'm asking the commission in general with the treatment facility master plan update and the Jacobs Phase 2 and Bureau of Reclamation.
I think a report to the Water Commission would be good, Lee. Do we have any other informational items? If not, we will adjourn at 6:08. Thank you all.
Treatment facility master plan.
Oh, the
This is a
master
huge
plan.
study.
Yeah.
And there was a woman who was kind of leading that, who made the report last time. But, the personnel have changed, but this is a, significant